Hello, everyone. Tonight, we are waking up somewhere you absolutely shouldn't be wedged inside the spongy reeds of a forgotten swamp, with something warm and ancient breathing beside you. The air smells like rotting lilies and wet stone, and the surface of the water is so still it might be glass. You blink once, and a shadow about the size of a canoe shifts just beneath it. You're not alone here, and you probably won't survive. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I do here. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. Now turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's get started tonight. You wake in the reeds with crocodile breath. Your cheek is pressed against something cold and slick as stone, you hope, but the rumble next to your neck tells you it's not a stone at all. It's a crocodilian body, vast and armored, still half sunk in yesterday's dreams. The texture is like wet bark. The breath smells like fish that died optimistically in the sun, and there's a tiny gurgling growl rising from its throat like a kettle boiling behind teeth. You don't move. You try not to breathe too hard, but this is not your bed and this is not your time. All around you, the landscape feels ancient but not dead. The ferns rise in slow motion, dripping with water so thick it clings like syrup. Dragonflies the size of dessert plates hang motionless in the air, their wings twitching like nervous metronomes. And beneath everything, the surface, the silence, the illusion of stillness, there is breath. Plural, more than one. And you feel it, not like a chase, not like a threat, more like a waiting. Something rustles at your elbow. Just a whisper. But your nerves recognize it before your ears do, scutes, sliding gently against each other like armor breathing. Here's the thing. Nobody warns you about crocodiles. They don't waste energy. That includes blinking, snapping, even acknowledging your presence. If they're near you, they've already made the calculation. You are either prey problem or part of the plan. And when they breathe next to you, you're probably not even that. In the early morning hush of the Mesozoic, when the first rays of sunlight can't even pierce the swamp's heavy canopy, you learned something the hard way. Ancient crocodiles were not solitary. Not all of them, not always. You lift your head just a little and peer across the clearing. There's another one, and another. A half circle of nostrils and ridged backs, each spaced just irregularly enough to make you think it's random. But it's not. Here's our historical fact for the night. Some fossil sites, like the famed Cerro Fortaleza Formation in Argentina, preserve what look like gatherings of ancient crocodile-like creatures, all buried together. Not just in floods, but with signs of age diversity and similar body positioning, suggesting something more social than solitary. Historians still debate whether this means coordinated behavior or just a lot of reptiles agreeing on prime real estate. But standing here with 7 half-visible crocs spaced like trapdoors across your exit route, it sure feels organized. You shift. Just a knee. A single intention, and one of them exhales. Not moves, not charges, just exhales this long, ancient sigh, like a creature remembering its first meal or its last disappointment. You're not even sure which direction the eyes are facing, and you already feel outnumbered by patience. Here's an off-topic fact to keep you company. Crocodiles can sleep with one hemisphere of their brain awake. That means while they're resting, part of them is still watching you. They might look peaceful, but somewhere inside that slow brain, you're already a footnote. The one beside you. Your cuddle buddy shifts just slightly, the tail curling forward almost protectively. You feel something heavy but calculated in that gesture, like it's hurting you, not eating you, not yet. There's no splash, no snarl, no motion that counts as aggression, and that's what makes it worse. If they wanted you gone, you'd be a red mist already. Instead, they're just here, with you, as if you woke up inside someone else's meeting, or worse, their hunting formation. You try to tell yourself this isn't a pack, that these are just overgrown lizards with unfortunate dental designs sunbathing in sync because it feels nice. But the way they space themselves, The way their tails don't overlap and their heads all tilt ever so slightly towards your ribcage, that's not coincidence. That's choreography. You shuffle half a foot back your spine, catching on a root, and you make a sound. Just a scrape. One sharp syllable of motion. Three of them blink together, and then nothing. Your skin goes cold. You are no longer thinking in terms of survival. You are thinking in terms of timing. That the next thing you do might trigger something bigger than hunger. Something rehearsed, like a signal. They've done this before. All of them. You want to scream. You want to stand up, shout something like, "Are you guys doing a drill?" and hope it's just the world's oldest flash mob. But instead you hold your breath. You think about moving backward. Very slowly. Like a bad idea retreating into the past. And one of them, maybe the one furthest from you, opens its jaws. Not to bite, just to signal. No sound, no roar. Just air, slow and sticky, hissing between teeth the size of ice cream scoops. You blink. Now the one beside you is gone. You didn't hear it move. It didn't shake the water, but it's no longer next to you. And the ripples where it used to be perfectly spaced, leading away, in a line, like a map being drawn just for you. So you follow. Or maybe you're being led. Either way, the swamp isn't done with you. The swamp isn't empty, it's rehearsing. You don't walk so much as you get nudged, as if the mud itself has opinions about your direction. Every step you take feels half voluntary. The roots subtly guide you. The reeds lean slightly just enough to suggest you shouldn't turn that way. The water has moods now. It puckers in rhythm, breathes in unison. Something about the place feels coordinated, but not in a friendly way. You pause. A ripple crosses your path, then another parallel, like parentheses closing in around you. You squint, hoping to spot what made them. Nothing. The surface goes still again, not flat still, the kind of stillness that suggests the water is waiting for its cue. That's when you realize nothing here is random. That twitch in the lilies mirrored exactly across the pond. That soft gurgle behind you echoed with the same tone on the opposite shore. Somewhere, something is counting. It's not a jungle symphony, it's a drill. A small branch drifts across the water, slow and dignified. Then it vanishes. Not sunk, not snagged, just taken. Something rose up silently, precisely, and withdrew beneath the surface with such discipline that even the splash was ashamed to exist. Historians still debate whether prehistoric crocodilians displayed anything resembling group intelligence. Pack hunting implies hierarchy strategy, maybe even assigned roles. But what if they didn't need to think that way? What if instinct alone, practiced over hundreds of thousands of years, created something even scarier? Fluid cooperation without communication. One early morning fossil bed from the Eocene period, the Mesopit in Germany, famously revealed multiple croc-like species preserved together, stacked, tangled, but not chaotic. Some paleontologists argue they were sleeping. Others claim they were engaging in group basking or feeding. But one theory whispers something darker, that maybe they moved together, not led, not following, just synchronized. You inch forward, the wet ground sucking at your feet with each reluctant step. And then you notice it, the birds, or the lack thereof. The usual squeals and hoots have stopped. A silence shaped like a question mark hovers in the trees above. You whisper to yourself, this place rehearses its murders. The joke doesn't help. Here's your off-topic fact. There's a jellyfish called Turritopsis dohrnii that can revert its cells and essentially live forever. The crocodiles here wouldn't be impressed. Immortality's a party trick. Timing is the real superpower. You walk along what appears to be a narrow embankment. To your left, thick clusters of floating vegetation. To your right, open water. And just beyond that, a series of small disturbances barely visible. Tiny plumes of air bubble up in pairs, like someone exhaling through flared nostrils. Again and again, all spaced like soldiers in a night march. You crouch behind a log and wait. The log is moss-covered, smooth as ancient driftwood. You brace your hand on it and it twitches. No bark, just a sleepy tail. You recoil and fall into the mud with the grace of a startled potato sack. A splash. Not big, but enough. You've broken the rhythm. There's a pause. You freeze. Every molecule in your body wants to run, but you feel it. The water around you doesn't react with panic or pursuit. It adjusts, reorients. The disturbances reform evenly spaced again, but this time wider, circling out. Like the water is recalibrating itself. It isn't rage, it's rehearsal. That's when you hear it. Not a growl, not a roar, a plop. Like someone dropped a rock into a barrel. But you feel it in your ribs before it reaches your ears. And suddenly, everything moves at once. Not a charge, not a stampede, but a shift. Like a scene change in a stage play where every actor knows their mark. 4 crocodiles rise out of the water slowly, precisely on 3 different sides of the pond. Each of them half-emerged, nostrils exposed, eyes trained forward. They don't need to speak. They don't even need to look at each other. They're spaced at points of interception. They've done this before. You're no longer a person here. You're the stimulus. The rehearsal has become the show. You are what their timing revolves around. You look up at the trees hoping for some ancient bird to scream a warning. But no, even the insects have stopped buzzing. This isn't nature being cruel. This is nature being methodical. You take one shaky breath and dive sideways into the cattails, crashing gracelessly through the stems, hoping chaos will confuse them. But they don't chase. They shift. One turns, then another. It's not about catching you. It's about guiding you, steering you. Like a shepherd, guiding a sheep that doesn't realize it's already fenced in. You keep moving until you reach a clearing where the swamp opens into a wide, dark pool with no visible bottom. The air is still thick with something musky and prehistoric. You are about to step back when the water ahead of you parts and a crocodilian head rises. Not lunges, rises, slowly, with purpose. It blinks once, and then it opens its mouth. You flinch, but nothing happens. Instead, behind it, 2 others rise in sequence. Spaced like punctuation, the middle one exhales a stream of bubbles. The others remain perfectly still. And then you don't know why you turn around. Behind you, 3 more, lined up, half and half out of the water. You are the period in a sentence they've written together. There's no attack, just presence. This isn't a hunt. It's a lesson. One you won't understand until much, much later. An ambush without a leader, yet perfectly timed. You'd think it would feel like panic. That somewhere buried under all the patience and pacing and pond ripples, there'd be a jump scare waiting for you. But no, what happens next isn't chaos. It's choreography. And you're not the audience, you're the decoy. You're standing in the shallow end of a wide, silty basin when it begins. A splash to your left. Not loud, but distinct. A splash that doesn't spread outward, it collapses inward. As if something dived down, not up. Your instinct says run, but the part of your brain that's still trying to get tenure says watch. Then comes the silence. Not the calm kind, the waiting kind. The kind of silence where the sound is behind your ears like pressure building. You take a breath slow. The water surface has dimples in it now. Small, tight disturbances in a line. 1, 2, 3, almost evenly spaced. Almost, like punctuation. Then one vanishes. Not a splash, just gone. Another line forms, this one closer to your ankles. You backpedal slowly until your heel snags on a submerged log. You fall backward and instinctively throw your hands out to brace yourself, but they don't touch ground, they touch teeth. For a moment, the croc doesn't react. It holds unmoving like an actor waiting for the cue. Then something behind you erupts. A wall of water, maybe 5 feet high, surges forward as another crocodile launches itself not towards you but past you. Past both of you, straight into a thicket of reeds on the opposite shore. The sound is explosive, but not clumsy. It's a precision detonation. Controlled, efficient. You stumble backward, hands stinging, and land with your full weight on the croc's head. It still doesn't move, but its eye rolls towards you slow and annoyed, like a subway passenger silently asking you to please stop leaning on them. Here's the fact. Crocodilian ambush strikes can be faster than a blink, literally. In controlled studies, Crocodilus porosus has been clocked at jaw closures faster than 50 milliseconds. But the terrifying part isn't the speed, it's the timing. Crocs wait, they measure, and then they synchronize. Historians still debate whether prehistoric crocodiles had the neurological hardware for intentional team hunting. Some argue the brain case fossils suggest limited social capability. Others point to the success of coordinated predators and ask, why wouldn't they evolve it? What nobody debates is this. They were very, very good at not missing. The croc beneath you finally shifts. Not because of you, but because the ambush has concluded. It slides backward like a boat pulling out of dock, leaving no wake. You scramble to your feet now, soaked and humiliated, and look across the pool. There, caught in the reeds, is a small hadrosaur. Juvenile. Maybe. Not quite dead. It thrashes once weakly, and then another croc pulls it under with a casual flick of the neck. And here's the part that breaks your brain. No croc fights the others for the kill. They take turns. First one tugs, then the other. Like children sharing a ribbon of pulled pork. No snarling. No snapping at each other. Just a methodical two-creature rotation. You watch breathless as a third croc joins not to steal but to block the struggling prey from drifting away. They're not competing. They're performing. Your off-topic fact. Ravens have been documented playing tug-of-war with sticks for no apparent reason, just to practice. One researcher called it cooperative tension rehearsal. It was cute when birds did it. With crocodiles, it feels less adorable. You back away slow, and just as you do, another croc, silent, small-eyed, and shaped like a medieval warship, slides between two trees to your right. It doesn't chase. It doesn't react to the kill. It simply takes up position, closing a gap in the perimeter. You weren't the target. You were the bait, the initial splash. It was a trigger. The one you landed on, a decoy holding formation until the others moved. The final strike coordinated with no visible command, no alpha, no leader, just a series of biological programs all activating at once perfectly, inevitably. This is a social system without dialogue. No snarls, no roars, no visible dominance displays, just the kind of fluid teamwork that makes you wonder if some things are born knowing what part to play. Historians love analogies, so here's one: think of it like murmuration. Those flocks of starlings twisting through the sky like smoke. No leader, just reaction chains, each bird adjusting to the 7 closest neighbors. Now put that logic underwater. Add teeth. Remove mercy. You stare at the water heart thumping and realize the crocs aren't watching the kill anymore. They're watching you, not with hunger, with curiosity, as if you passed some kind of test. Or maybe as if there's a second act. You try not to make noise as you back away through the underbrush. A stick cracks underfoot. One of the crocodiles flinches, just the tail. Another shifts slightly to the left, and you realize that their spacing has changed again. They're recalibrating, not for a kill, for a lesson. You start moving faster now, not running, just quicker, but the water mirrors your movement. One croc slips along the shoreline in perfect parallel to your path. A second one shadows behind. You're in a corridor now, not one made of trees, but of intent. And just when you think you're free, the biggest one, the one you hadn't noticed, rises ahead of you. Half submerged, broad as a fishing boat, it doesn't move. It's blocking your exit. You stop, and for a long moment, nothing happens. Then, behind you, another splash. You turn, and this time it's a fish. Just a fish, probably. But when you look back, the big one is gone. Just a few ripples closing like lips around a secret. Tracks that form spirals, not straight lines. The next morning, or what feels like it, you find yourself wandering a little higher out of the deepest swamp basin and into a muddy open flat. Your boots wait. Are you still wearing boots? Doesn't matter. Whatever's on your feet is coated in ancient sludge that smells like something that lost a fight to time and mildew. Every step makes a noise like a wet apology. But here's the strange thing. There are tracks, obvious ones. Heavy three-toed impressions pressed deep into the clay preserved by last night's rain. Some belong to the ancient crocodilians. You recognize the splayed clawed feet and dragging tail marks, but it's the pattern that stops you. They don't go forward. They spiral. Not a perfect spiral, like some textbook golden ratio nonsense, no. These loops are organic, messy, repeated arcs that almost circle back to where they started. Like something circled a few times, then paused, then did it again. But not alone. You see a second set, fainter, offset by just enough to suggest timing. One slightly ahead, the other lagging behind but matching the turns. You crouch low, fingers hovering above the indentations. One curve, then a pivot. Then the next track curves over that pivot like a partner following close behind. You mutter, "That's a dance." And maybe it is. Or maybe it's something worse. Because when you follow the spirals outward, they don't just end. They multiply. Another pair, then another, some smaller, some larger. Loops inside loops like crop circles made by very tired reptiles. And here's a thought that bubbles up before you can stop it. They weren't circling prey. They were circling each other. You stand slowly, the early light slanting through the trees in golden beams, and from this angle, the overlapping spirals look like sigils, like ritual signs. Geometry not meant for us. Historians still debate whether ancient crocodilians engaged in courtship displays. We know modern crocs bellow, posture, slap water, and even blow bubbles during mating season. But these spiral trackways don't fit that. They're too repetitive, too layered. Less flirtation, more formation. One fossil site in Bolivia. El Molino Formation includes overlapping crocodiliform tracks that seem to shift direction multiple times. Some paleontologists say it was the result of water receding. Others suggest group behavior, maybe even herding. But herding what? You press on deeper into the pattern and realize something unnerving. None of the spirals overlap violently. No signs of slipping, no tail drag chaos. Just a kind of eerie coordination. Like the whole swamp stood up and practiced a waltz. Here's your off-topic fact ants. Under certain heat stress conditions have been observed walking in endless spirals until death called ant mills. The cause over-reliance on pheromone trails instead of individual decision-making. The result. A living loop. Maybe what you're standing in isn't a trackway. Maybe it's a feedback loop. One crocodile moves, another matches. The next mimics that, over and over, until the ground itself becomes an echo. You take a few more steps and freeze. There, in the center of the biggest spiral, is a drag mark. Not broad like a tail, narrow, precise, and very fresh. Something was pulled here, slowly. There's no blood, no feathers, no obvious victim. Just the dragging line weaving between claw marks like a thread being stitched through cloth. You crouch again, tracing it with your hand. The mud is still wet, soft, and loose. Whatever moved through here did so minutes ago, and it wasn't panicked. It was part of the pattern. You rise, heart-thumping now, not from fear exactly, but from anticipation. Like you've walked into a theater mid-play and the spotlight might land on you at any second. Then you see something that makes you stop breathing altogether. At the far end of the clearing, a large hump of earth. You almost ignore it. It looks like a termite mound or collapsed tree root, but then you see the eye. Just one, half-lidded, watching. It doesn't blink. It waits. The crocodile is enormous. Not just long wide, broad across the back like a dinner table carved from armor. It's half buried in leaves and dirt, perfectly still, as if it crawled here during the last ice age and decided not to leave. But the eye moves. It follows you, not with hunger, with Observation. You take a slow step backward, and two more humps shift in the underbrush. Oh, okay, you're in a spiral now. The loops weren't for prey. They were practice. No wonder the tracks didn't show panic. The prey never knew it was being surrounded. This wasn't a hunt. It was a study in patience. You whisper to no one in particular, "I've been walking in circles." And from behind you, the reeds part just slightly. A crocodile glides into view, silent and purposeful. It doesn't charge. It doesn't posture. It reclaims its place in the spiral. You, however, have clearly wandered out of bounds. You retreat not out of fear, but because you sense you're disrupting something. Like stepping into a ritual that predates language, one that might be older than prey itself. Here's what gets you: they don't all move at once. They move in suggestions. One shifts its tail, another adjusts its jaw, and then the next two reposition as if the adjustment is being passed along a signal translated through silence. And suddenly the spirals don't look like hunting grounds anymore. They look like memory, etched into mud, preserved through repetition. Movement as story. You're not meant to witness this, but you have. You're being stalked, but by silence itself. You don't realize when it started, only that it has. The swamp is hushed in a way that's less about quiet and more about absence. The buzzing insects have retreated. The frogs have stopped their idiotic night song. Even the trees seem to hold their breath, their leaves swaying a little too slowly as if afraid to attract attention. The air feels heavy now, pressurized, like the sky's sitting closer than usual, weighing down your shoulders. You walk careful not to splash. Not because you're trying to be stealthy, but because the sound would feel rude. The way whistling does in a graveyard. It starts with a feeling, like you're being watched, not from behind, but from everywhere. Every patch of still water has an audience. Every log has the potential to blink. Every lump of moss has texture too detailed to trust. And then you see it. Not the crocodile, the gap where it used to be. A perfect impression in the mud where one had been lying. You saw it earlier, swore it was asleep. You didn't hear it leave. You look around, nothing. And that's the terrifying part. You know it moved, but it made no sound. Here's your historical fact. Crocodiles have some of the most finely tuned pressure sensors in the animal kingdom, called integumentary sensory organs. They can detect tiny vibrations in water even in pitch-black conditions. A splash a mile away might as well be an alarm clock in their bathtub. They don't need to see you, they feel you. And now you feel them too. Your foot brushes something beneath the surface, cool, smooth, but unyielding. You recoil, heart pounding, and the water churns faintly 10 feet away. It wasn't what you touched. It was what felt you touch it. You spin. Behind you, just ripples. No jaws, no roars, just absence. You take a deep breath, try to ground yourself. Swamp water smells like a compost pile ate a fish and forgot to finish digesting it. But today there's something else. A note of musk. A scent you've never associated with fear before: leaves. Torn, crushed, damp leaves. Not like something fell, like something waited. You want to shout just to break the quiet, but you can't, because you get the horrible sense that if you make a sound, you won't hear theirs, and theirs comes faster. You step onto a log and it rolls slightly beneath you, not enough to fall, just enough to whisper, "Remember where you are." Here's your off-topic fact to lighten things up, sort of. There's a species of catfish in South America that can wiggle up on land and hunt birds. It silently slides up muddy banks, launches out of the water like a clumsy torpedo, and drags chicks back under. It doesn't need legs, just timing. And as you think about that, a rock nearby lets out a breath. It wasn't a rock. It was one of them. Completely still. So still that your brain filed it under background. Its eyes are closed, or maybe not. The pupils are so narrow, so well camouflaged, that you can't be sure they're eyes at all. Could be patterns, could be shadows. You're being watched by geometry and the silence. It's not empty, it's responsive. Every sound you don't make is answered with movement you don't hear. There's a pause. Then a flutter of water to your left. then another, then nothing. Historians still debate whether early crocodilians hunted alone or together. There's no direct evidence of hunting parties, no bones bearing the unmistakable marks of organized kills. But the absence of evidence is not the evidence of absence. And sometimes, the silence is the evidence. You crouch low trying to make yourself small. Not invisible, just uninteresting. And that's when you hear it the tiniest shift. A breath behind you. Not sharp, not sudden. Considerate. Like someone gently announcing their presence before they disappear again. You don't turn. You don't run. You simply wait. And then you hear it again farther away. Another behind that. Closer. Not moving toward you, just circling. And you finally realize it, they're not chasing you. They're mapping you. Adjusting positions based on where you pause. Where you hesitate. Where you dare to look. They're stalking your silence. They're measuring when you don't move. This is the moment when you truly feel it. This isn't their first time doing this, and it might not be your last time seeing it. You rise slowly, scanning the underbrush. Nothing. But that's the trick. It always looks like nothing. Every patch of still water. A potential hiding place. Every breath of wind. An excuse to reposition. They're not in a hurry. They don't need to be. You're the one burning calories. You take a few careful steps backward and the branches barely rustle. Still, something in the reeds rustles in perfect sync. A delay, like an echo with muscle. You want to say something clever, maybe mutter nice try to the forest, but the thought of hearing a response paralyzes you. So you keep moving, not running, not hiding, just threading your way between attention spans. This isn't a fight, it's an audition. You get the sense that you're being judged, not on flavor, but on behavior. Flashback Sarcosuchus and its bone-crunching smile. You've earned a moment's distance now, just a shallow breath of space between you and the ever-watching water. You settle into the crook of a bent tree, half collapsed, half holding itself up out of pride. It smells like fungus and old sweat, but you don't mind. You need somewhere your back isn't exposed, somewhere you can think, and think you do. Because as you sit blinking through the moss-heavy sunlight, your memory drifts not just back a few minutes or hours, but epochs. Back to a time when crocodiles were something much, much worse. You think of Sarcosuchus imperator, you know the super croc. The one every nature documentary drags out with thunder sounds and CGI jaws. But the bones are worse. Discovered in what is now the Sahara Desert, Sarcosuchus wasn't just a big crocodile, it was a statement piece. 30 feet long, maybe more. Weighing over 8 metric tons. A skull as long as a grown man is tall, filled with more than 100 teeth shaped like banished railroad spikes. And the smile. That unnerving, permanent grin. Modern crocs have broad utilitarian snout tools designed for survival. But Sarcosuchus, it had this exaggerated, almost smug elongation. A snout that suggested confidence, overkill, arrogance even. The kind of mouth that didn't just kill prey, it embarrassed them. One fossil was found with a vertebra lodged between its teeth. Paleontologists still debate whether it was scavenging or hunting, but either way the message is clear. It didn't nibble. It removed limbs. You imagine yourself back there, back in the Cretaceous floodplains, a world where nothing was safe near the water. The trees are taller, the sky is redder, and the shadows move on their own schedules. Sarcosuchus didn't hide, it loomed. This thing wasn't slinking through water like its quieter cousins. It would bask in the open jaw cracked just wide enough for the sun to warm the inside of its throat. Sometimes it didn't bother hunting at all, just waited for something dumber to get close, which, to be fair, probably included most of the ecosystem. Your off-topic fact. There's a fungus called Ophiocordyceps unilateralis that infects ants and forces them to climb high before killing them, so the spores can rain down and infect others. It weaponizes behavior. And standing in the Sarcosuchus's world, you get the uncomfortable feeling that it too could turn the environment into a weapon. Water, sun, shade, all tools, all traps. And now, sitting in this tree-rooted hollow surrounded by the descendants of that lineage, you wonder, what else did it pass down? Because the ones you're with now, silent, coordinated, deliberate, they don't look like Sarcosuchus. They're smaller, slimmer. They don't strut like him, don't slam through trees just to make a point, but they remember something. Not in words, not even in instinct. More like architectural memory. Design templates passed down not through training but through shape. Historians argue over whether Sarcosuchus had a bite force greater than Tyrannosaurus rex. There's no firm consensus, but it did have something arguably more terrifying, a lifespan. Decades, maybe even centuries. Long enough to learn, long enough to repeat, and long enough for its patterns to echo through time. You stare at the water again. One of the crocs is there, watching, half submerged. But not Sarcosuchus. Still, you feel the ghost. You blink, and the world flickers. For just a moment, the shadow in the water gets bigger. Your eyes water, and when you look again, it's back to normal. But the feeling lingers, like someone taller just walked past your childhood bedroom door. It's not a haunting. It's a legacy. The way a child unconsciously mimics the way their parent stands even if they never met them. The way birds still fluff their feathers like dinosaurs flaring a crest. The way crocodiles today will still perform the roll the death roll even when it's not strictly necessary. That's what you're seeing now. You've been watching a ritual that began millions of years ago, started by jaws the size of bathtubs, perfected by quieter children. This isn't new behavior, it's refined behavior. And here's the worst part, it works better now. Sarcosuchus didn't need friends. But the ones you're dealing with, they've discovered something more efficient than brute strength: timing. They don't roar, they position. They don't run, they coordinate. They've inherited the power but split it into multiple bodies. You stand slowly, the mud trying to cling to your skin like a needy X. You scan the tree line. There's nothing, but you know they're there. You move forward anyway, crossing the log bridge that leads out of the shallow basin and towards slightly drier land. Your nerves hum like stretched wires. Sarcosuchus may be gone, but what he taught the swamp, still here. Cooperation or coincidence, you can't tell yet. The landscape opens up slightly, giving you a little breathing room, or the illusion of it anyway. Low vegetation scrapes at your ankles. The water still glimmers in the corners of your vision, but here the mud turns patchy, broken up by stone and sand, and finally sunlight. You exhale not because you're safe, but because you're tired of holding your breath for strangers with better reflexes. And yet, you don't relax. Because now the behavior changes. You watch two of them. Crocodiles, mid-sized, broad-snouted, sharing the remains of a kill. Not fighting, not growling, not even hissing. They're passing it back and forth. One grips the pale limb of some unfortunate swamp dweller, pulls, then pauses. The second grips another piece, pulls in the opposite direction. No spin, no thrashing, no dominance display, just a synchronized tug. Like kids arguing over a towel in slow motion. They separate each with a bite and begin chewing in place, not even 5 feet apart. You whisper, "Okay, that's not normal." Because you've seen crocs fight over scraps. Seen them snap at siblings, glare at strangers. But this is a peace treaty with teeth. And you really can't tell if this is intelligence or just accident. Here's your historical fact. Modern crocodiles have shown signs of limited cooperation, especially during feeding. In captivity, some species will feed side by side, even rotate access to carcasses. Wild observations are rarer, but stories persist of 2 crocs blocking fish escape routes, of groups forming a half-moon around waterbirds. It's rare, but it happens. Still, historians and biologists are split. Was it chance or choice? And watching these two now, the question rises again like swamp gas. Because it's not just food sharing, it's the positioning. They face each other at just the right angles. Neither crowding, neither flinching. No body language of threat. No back-off tail thumps. It's almost polite. Then a third crocodile approaches. Not stealthily, just walking, casually, confidently. You flinch, expecting tension, but neither of the original pair reacts. The third one pauses, watches, then lies down next to them with the resigned groan of someone joining a picnic a little late. Now it's three, all within nose-boop distance. Nobody bites. They just exist together. And this is when your brain starts twitching. Because either you're witnessing the most astonishing evolutionary fluke, or crocodiles are doing something we pretend only mammals do. They're being civil. Here's your off-topic fact: in a few Amazonian tribes, people whisper to fire before adding wood. Not as prayer, just out of respect. You're not asking permission. You're acknowledging that something ancient is helping you survive. You get the sense that these crocodiles are doing something similar, acknowledging each other's hunger, respecting space, feasting quietly. It doesn't last. One finishes early, shuffles off. The others linger. But there's still no conflict. You walk in a wide arc around them, giving the circle a generous berth, and as you do, one lifts its head slightly to follow your movement. No aggression, just a note. We see you. It feels less like surveillance and more like bookkeeping. They're keeping track of you, and maybe of each other. Historians still debate what defines social behavior in reptiles. Do they need hierarchy, shared goals, or is simply tolerating each other long enough to finish dinner enough? You think about the spiral tracks again, the synchronized strikes, the baited silences, and now this feeding without tension. You whisper, half joking, "Am I at a dinner party?" And the wind picks up just enough to sound like a snort. You move on the terrain, firming beneath your feet. The vegetation here is less oppressive, ferns giving way to stubby palms and cracked, sun-dried channels. The air still hums with moisture, but it's broken by a dry breeze. And then just ahead you spotted a deep depression in the mud. A print, huge, wide, heavy, not crocodilian, a theropod. Long toes, deep claw marks. You lean in, the print's fresh, sun-warmed edges still sharp. And flanking it on either side are crocodile tracks. Not intersecting, not attacking, following. You step back. You're not the only thing being monitored in this swamp. You spin slowly in place, scanning the forest edges. Nothing. But now you feel it again, that pressure, that awareness. Not hunger. Observation. You're a node in their system. A variable. You crouch near a tree trunk and exhale. You whisper, "So what are you doing?" Tracking or tagging, and somewhere just out of sight something adjusts. Not a threat, just realignment, like a camera shifting focus. The crocodiles aren't just cooperating with each other, they're cooperating with context. And that's the part you can't unfeel. It's not about friends, or even food. It's about awareness. And maybe, just maybe, awareness is contagious. Mothers that nested in crowds. You don't expect peace. Not here, not after what you've seen. But suddenly the swamp falls into a soft rhythm, like it's remembering something older than teeth. You feel it in the stillness. Not that stalking, predatory kind, but something gentler, purposeful, quiet. The air changes to less sharp, more earthy. Smells of wet dirt, broken reeds, and the faint sweetness of crushed flowers drift up from the ground like smoke from a dream. There are no kills nearby, no baiting games. Just a flat, slightly raised patch of land ringed with mud walls and sun-dried branches. And then you see them, dozens. Not full-grown monsters, not the massive boat-length terrors you've come to expect, but smaller crocodilians, some barely bigger than toddlers, dug into oval nests scooped into the slope of the clearing. And they're nesting. You almost laugh. After everything, after spirals and shadows and impossible ambushes here, they're being parents. You crouch low behind the tilted fern and scan the field. Some nests are full of eggs neatly stacked, warm-colored, faintly steaming in the sun. Others have already hatched, and the mothers lie with their snouts half-submerged, watching the tiny hatchlings like suspicious librarians. No one moves unless absolutely necessary. The babies chirp softly, high-pitched beeps, more bird than beast, and their calls seem to bounce off one another like sonar. The mothers don't snap, don't lunge, they wait. watching. And here's what surprises you, there are so many of them. Dozens of nests within tail's reach of one another. No walls, no fences, just an agreement. Or maybe a truce. You breathe out slowly. Here's your historical fact. Modern crocodilians like the Nile crocodile and American alligator are some of the most attentive reptilian parents alive today. They guard their nests, carry hatchlings in their jaws, even respond to distress calls, and in rare environments, multiple mothers may nest in the same area, creating massive communal hatcheries. That's what you're seeing now. A prehistoric nursery, and it's shockingly calm. You expected snarls and territory fights, maybe a few decapitated babies. But instead, there's something bordering on cooperation here. Mothers shift carefully as if aware of each other's space. One noses a wandering hatchling back toward its nest, not hers, but she does it anyway. Another adjusts leaves atop her clutch, eyes never leaving yours. You duck back down, suddenly self-conscious. You've walked into a daycare where every staff member has teeth designed to puncture tortoises. Your off-topic fact. Meerkats teach their young to handle venomous prey in stages. They start by giving dead scorpions, then ones with stingers removed, finally live ones. Actual instruction. Hands-on learning. Reptiles aren't supposed to do that, but crocodilians, they blur the lines. And you watch as one mother does something strangely familiar. A hatchling squeals perhaps too close to a neighbor's nest, and its mother emits a low, bubbling grunt. The baby stops. The neighbor shifts, but neither attacks. Instead, the hatchling turns back corrected. It learned. Historians still debate how much behavioral transmission occurs in non-mammalian species. Did ancient crocs have something like culture passed down, not just an instinct, but an observation? You're watching a behavior that looks suspiciously like training. The young practice diving, wrestling, even hiding. Not in panic, but in play. And suddenly you remember the spirals, the coordinated feeding, the quiet watching. And you think, what if that wasn't just predation? What if it was practice? You rise slightly, watching as two mothers pass within inches of one another. One grunts softly. The other halts, lets her pass. No aggression, just awareness. Space sharing. Boundary respecting. These are crocodiles. And they are parenting together. You whisper to yourself, that's unsettlingly wholesome. Then one of the hatchlings scuttles too far straight into your line of sight. It chirps, curious, its eyes wide, stubby tail wagging slightly. For a second, you smile. Then something shifts beside it. A mother. She doesn't charge. She positions. A single step forward. She puts herself between the baby and you. Doesn't growl, doesn't bare her teeth. Just lets you know, that's mine. You raise your hands slowly, not because she'll understand the gesture, but because you need to. She blinks once, then turns away, guiding the baby back with a gentle bump of her jaw. The whole field sighs as the tension releases. Leaves sway. Water trickles. The nursery resets. And you suddenly understand. The crowding. The overlapping nests. It's not a mistake, not a lack of territory. It's strategy. More mothers equals more eyes, more ears, more teeth. Predators, especially egg thieves, would be foolish to try anything here. Because when one mother grunts, 20 others can respond. You've seen crocodiles attack with timing. Now you see how they defend with it. This isn't just parenting. It's communal defense. And it didn't start last week. It started millions of years ago. You take one final glance as you leave the clearing. The babies chirp. The mothers grunt. A few crocodiles close their eyes in the sun. It's quiet. But not for long. Because when these hatchlings grow up, they'll know exactly what to do. One growl, 20 heads turn. You think you're clear of the nursery. You really do. The chirps fade into the underbrush. The sun brightens the dirt at your feet, and for a fleeting second, the ancient swamp almost feels normal. Like a place instead of a presence. You stop to drink from your canteen stale warm water that tastes vaguely like regret, and then you hear it. Not a roar, not a hiss, a growl. Low, deep, Just one long bubbling tone like a cello string rubbed underwater. And everything changes. Immediately, everything stops. Insects freeze. Birds, if there were any left, go silent mid-wing beat. The breeze seems to stumble over itself. Even your heartbeat feels like it needs to wait for permission before continuing. Then you hear it. Movement. But not the frantic kind. Not crashing, not chaotic. Synchronized. Branches creak in multiple directions. Water shifts. Leaves part. And somewhere impossibly feet step in unison. You crouch instinctively, trying to make yourself smaller than your questions. Because you've heard crocodiles hiss, you've heard them bellow, but this was something else. A signal. The growl wasn't a warning, it was a message. And now everyone's answering. You peek over a fallen log, careful not to crack any twigs and spot them. A dozen crocodiles, maybe more, gliding through the undergrowth, not toward you but through you, past your hiding spot, silent but purposeful. Each one slips forward in perfect rhythm like they were waiting for the green light. You feel it in your ribs again. Not fear alignment. They're not panicked, they're called. Here's your historical fact. Modern crocodilians can produce infrasonic vocalizations, deep rumbling sounds that travel through water and earth farther than air. Some researchers suggest these calls can organize group movements, signal danger, or even coordinate basking behavior. Historians still debate whether such vocalizations existed in prehistoric species or if what you're seeing is something even older body language turned seismic. But there's no debate in your bones, because one vibration shifted an entire corner of the forest, and nobody seemed confused. Even the babies, you hear them again answer with chirps, echoes, repeats. The growl was a thread, and now the web is moving. Here's your off-topic fact. Elephants can detect distant thunder through their feet. They literally hear storms by feeling them before their ears ever register the sound. You're starting to believe crocodiles might do something similar, but with intent. One croc stops at the edge of a clearing and lifts its head. Not high, just enough. A second does the same. A third mirrors it, but turns 30 degrees. Like satellite dishes repositioning. You track their movement for a while and realize they're forming a ring. A loose one. Not perfectly geometric, but purposeful. Something's at the center. You move closer, one soft step at a time, until you catch a glimpse. A carcass. Not fresh, not quite decayed. Something large, maybe a theropod chick. Hard to tell. Stripped of feathers, hollowed out, still red in patches. And nobody's eating. They're just gathered, watching, waiting. For what? Then from the opposite side of the circle, a second growl. Shorter, sharper, almost like a cough in a different dialect. The nearest crocodile reacts instantly, slips forward, takes a bite, pulls back. That was permission. Now the others begin to feed, one at a time, in order. No biting over shoulders, no diving in head first. They take turns. Even in the chaos of meat, there's rhythm. You sit down slowly, legs giving out under the weight of confusion. Are they organized? Like wolves? Like orcas? You remember watching seagulls fight over a French fry? And now, here you are in the Mesozoic watching crocodiles obey something that isn't teeth. Coordination without communication. Or maybe communication you just can't perceive. Maybe that's what's always unnerved you here, not the silence, but the possibility that it's full of meaning. You whisper, "What are you?" And one of them lifts its head from the carcass mouth, dripping eyes locked on yours. Not surprised, just aware, like it heard your question, but sees no reason to answer. You lower your head, hoping that's interpreted as humility. The circle continues its slow dance. One eats, one waits, one shifts to block scavengers. You spot a few smaller crocs at the edge, juveniles maybe, not participating, just watching. Learning? Historians still argue about whether ancient reptiles could teach. Could pass behaviors on not genetically but socially. But as you watch one juvenile mimic the position of an adult angle tail placement jaw tilt, you think this isn't instinct. This is rehearsal. The carcass is gone within minutes. No blood frenzy, no screams, just efficiency. Then just like that, it's over. They melt away into the trees. No stragglers, no cleanup, just vanishing. The clearing empties. The silence resumes, but it feels different now. Not empty, satisfied. You sit there for a while, legs trembling, trying to process the choreography you just witnessed. They weren't just feeding, they were coordinating a performance. And the growl? That was the conductor's baton. The ghost of Postosuchus lingers in the mud. You're moving again, though, not by choice. Something in your legs tells you it's time to keep walking. Keep listening, keep not doing whatever would make a crocodile curious. The trees thin as you push forward, and the ground opens into a flat, cracked expanse. Less swamp, more floodplain. The kind of place where things come to dry out or disappear. That's when you notice the prints. Deep, three-toed impressions, massive, spaced out with confidence. You brace for theropod, maybe some primitive raptor, but then you catch the tail drag. Not horizontal, upright. You feel a chill ripple across your neck, because this wasn't a dinosaur. This was Postosuchus. And if crocodiles have a ghost ancestor, it's probably him. Here's your historical fact. Postosuchus Kirkpatrick lived in the late Triassic over 200 million years ago, long before true crocodiles or dinosaurs rose to fame. It walked upright with strong hind limbs, a narrow head filled with curved teeth and forward-facing eyes. Not quite a crocodile, not quite a dinosaur, but a predator that didn't care about categories. You scan the prints again, too sharp to be old, but that's impossible, right? The species is long gone. Extinct, bones buried, museum ready, and yet you feel like you're being watched. Again, it's different from before. The crocodile stares were ambient, collective. This is singular, focused, predatory. You hear a rustle to the right, you turn. Nothing. But the trees don't feel empty. Historians still debate where Postosuchus fits on the reptile family tree. Is it a cousin to crocodilians, a distant ancestor, or a branch that twisted itself out of existence? But behavior leaves deeper echoes than bones. And you wonder, did the crocodiles inherit more than a jaw shape? Did they inherit a playbook? Because Postosuchus didn't sneak. It stalked. It walked upright, eye level with prey. It chose angles, paths, patterns. And as you glance down at your muddy footprints, you see they match the spacing of its tracks. You are unknowingly walking the same pace. You look back. The wind shifts. Something large slinks behind a ridge too quickly to track. Your off-topic fact. Snow leopards use the same paw placements when retracing steps to conserve energy and reduce visibility. It's not instinct, it's strategy. And right now, the swamp feels like it's playing a long game. A slow-burning echo chamber of tactics passed down not just genetically, but behaviorally. As if the mud itself remembers how to move. You step carefully over a fallen log, then pause. There's something etched into its surface grooves. 4 parallel scrapes deep and deliberate. Not claw marks from a climb, more like practice swings. Rehearsals, as if something was testing its bite or reminding itself how to hold. You whisper, "You still here, old man," and the reeds answer with a soft shuffle, not crocodilian, too upright. You move toward the ridge where the shadow disappeared. Your curiosity has officially taken the wheel from your survival instincts. The climb is short but steep. You brace yourself against knotted roots and slippery stone. And at the top you find bones, a partial skeleton. Large, sprawled out, cracked by sun, hugged by moss. You count the vertebrae, follow the ribs. The skull is broken but familiar. Narrow snout, empty eye socket, teeth like forgotten knives. It's not a dinosaur. It's not a crocodile. It's a reminder. This place is old enough to keep its memories above ground. You sit beside it, not touching, just acknowledging. And you wonder, was this the one who walked first? Who stalked in formation before formations had names? Who passed along the idea of strategy long before brain size made it fashionable? And below you, as if on cue, the water shifts. Not violently, just enough. You see movement in the tree line, again low and broad. But trailing behind it, upright, almost bipedal, comes another shadow. It's gone before your brain finishes its sentence. You laugh nervously. You're seeing things, right? Postosuchus is extinct. But crocodiles aren't. And maybe that's the point. The ones who watched him remembered. You stand and begin your descent. As you walk, the wind brushes past your cheek with a sound almost like breath. You glance back at the skeleton. Still there. Still unmoving. But part of you believes the swamp just winked at you. An underwater hallway of listening mouths. The trail narrows again. Water reasserts itself, rising like it's been waiting for you to come back. What was dry becomes damp, then slick, then soupy. You're back in it now. The muck pulls at your ankles like an old friend with bad boundaries, and every step sounds like a secret being pulled from a throat. You tell yourself this is still safer than what's behind you, but what's ahead isn't much better. Because just beyond the next bend, the land dips and you find yourself at the edge of a lagoon. Narrow, long, curved like a half moon with rock outcrops marking each end. There's barely any current. The surface is glass. It looks peaceful. So, of course it isn't. You step closer and that's when your skin starts telling you something your eyes can't see. It's not just water. It's teeth. They're not obvious at first, but then you see them narrow ridges beneath the surface, motionless, slightly domed, each one barely breaking the tension of the water. Then an eye. Just one. Half submerged, focused and quiet. You scan the lagoon and realize it's full of crocodiles, spaced in a near-perfect formation like decorative statues in an ancient hallway. Their snouts form an unbroken pattern, as if the swamp drew lines with a compass and asked its children to stay inside them. They're not moving. Not yet. You whisper, "Okay, that's excessive." Your voice dies before it crosses the water. There are at least 20 here, maybe more, all facing the same direction inward, toward a narrow channel running along the center of the lagoon, the kind of place prey would pass through without knowing it. And this is the ambush corridor? Here's your historical fact. Some modern crocodile species have been documented, creating cooperative fish corrals lining up to block off escape paths and then striking in sequence to trap schools of fish. It's rare, but it's real. Historians still debate how conscious this coordination is. Instinct, accident, or intention. You're about to vote intention, because this isn't just a feeding lane. It's a listening chamber. The water here is perfectly still, perfectly quiet, which means every sound, a drip, a flutter, a careless breath echoes like a dinner bell. You take a cautious step onto a partially submerged log, and it creaks faintly. 10 jaws tighten. They don't lunge. They just adjust. A repositioning of mass. A micro-twitch. Not aggression, calibration. You freeze. Even your heartbeat feels too loud here. Then you remember crocodiles have those integumentary sensory organs, tiny pits on their snouts that detect water pressure changes. One drop, one ripple, and they can triangulate a disturbance. You're standing above a biological sonar grid, a hallway built from patience and perception. And they're waiting for something. Not you necessarily, but something like you. You glance down the lagoon, no signs of recent kills, no thrashing, just the stillness of something pre-hunt. And yet they don't look hungry. They look poised. Your off-topic fact. Some species of bats listen to the wing beats of insects to identify prey in complete darkness. Their ears detect tiny shifts in frequency mid-flight. They hunt not with sight but with rhythm. Now imagine dozens of crocodiles doing the same thing, waiting for the tremble in the mud, the flutter on the surface, and responding not as individuals but as one system. You take a step back. Slowly. One foot into the muck, careful not to splash. The closest crocodile exhales a slow stream of bubbles. No movement, just acknowledgement. You get the sense you're not in danger, not because they can't catch you, but because you're not the target right now. You're just walking through their inbox. Somewhere to the left, a single dragonfly skims too low. One crocodile snaps. Not violently, just a flick. The others don't move. It was a mistake, an out-of-turn rehearsal, the kind of thing you'd get scolded for in a military drill. The hallway returns to stillness, and you realize something new. They aren't waiting for food. They're demonstrating. For you, maybe. For the younger crocs nearby, more likely. Because tucked into the reeds at either end of the lagoon are the small ones again. Half-sized, tentative, watching. You're in a classroom now, and you were almost the test question. One of the juveniles slinks closer to the water's edge. Stops. Eyes one of the big crocs. Emulates its posture. Front limbs splayed just so. Tail curved slightly left. Mouth half open. The teacher doesn't correct, just exhales. Training accepted. You crouch low and squint, trying to remember the outlines of crocodilian behavior of instincts shaped not just by hunger but by proximity. You whisper, "You're not ambushing anymore," and a tiny ripple spreads across the surface. A slow confirmation, they're not predators right now. They're instructors. This hallway isn't built for chaos. It's built for consistency. And once the lesson's learned, then the water can boil. You back away, heart thudding in your chest like a dropped drum, and the water stays still behind you. No chase, no reaction. Just one final growl, deep, soft, almost affectionate rumbles from the far end of the lagoon. Class dismissed. Fossil beds that tell a crowded story. You climb a slope now, finally breaking free from the lagoon's hypnotic geometry. The trees thin. The canopy lifts. The air feels less like a secret and more like an invitation to breathe without asking. You're on higher ground, and strangely it smells of dust and dry rock, not water. A ledge ahead glints in the sunlight. You make your way there and freeze, because the ground is bones, thousands of them, layered, twisted, arranged by accident or purpose. You can't tell. You stand at the edge of what must have once been a watering hole, long since turned to stone and silence. A natural bowl filled with 100 lives. Ribs fan out like sunbursts. Skulls peek from the sediment like half-buried moons. Spines curve together interlocked as if the bodies fell mid-dance. And many of the skulls, crocodilian, not one or two, dozens, young, old, broad-snouted and narrow, some nearly intact, others crumbled under centuries of compression. One skull has another pressed against its jaw so close their teeth are tangled. You imagine them dying that way. Not in a fight, not in a frenzy, just together. Here's your historical fact in sites like the Mahajanga Basin in Madagascar and the Cerro Fortaleza Formation in South America. Paleontologists have uncovered dense aggregations of crocodiliform fossils, some stacked, others side by side. While some argue this was caused by drought-induced die-offs or flash floods, others suspect group living might have brought them together in the first place. Historians still debate whether these clusters represent social groups, seasonal congregations, or just bodies dumped together by bad timing. But this place, it feels intentional. You step carefully between the skeletons. The ground is cracked but not unstable, just layered with too much memory. You spot bones in poses that suggest rest, not struggle, not collapse. One is curled tail wrapped to chest like a sleeping cat. Another is upright front limbs beneath it, head resting flat. And then there's a cluster of juveniles, 3 small skeletons in a curve around a larger one. Their snouts nestled against its flanks, like they never knew anything but safety. You crouch beside them and your shadow makes the scene look like a mural. You whisper, "Who were you?" And the silence answers not with words but with a kind of humility. Because now, you know not all ancient predators died in solitude. Some died in place surrounded by family or kin, or others who at least tolerated them long enough to lie down in the same dirt. You shift slightly and hear a faint crunch beneath your boot. You flinch, not from guilt, from awe. Because that crunch was a rib, and that rib came from a croc who might have died next to its own reflection. Your off-topic fact. There's a species of monkey in Ethiopia, Galatas, that sleep in tight huddles on cliff ledges, not for warmth, for protection. One eye open, one ear listening, one heart waiting for the rock to shift. They trust the group more than the dark. Maybe crocodiles once did too. You look across the fossil bed again and it's crowded. Not chaotic, just full. A community that either lived together, died together, or was buried in a moment of shared misfortune. You picture them sunbathing as a group, patrolling riverbanks in twos or threes, watching each other's nests, learning from elders, defending one another from something worse than hunger. And when the flood or fire or drought came, they didn't scatter. They stayed. You imagine the last one here, the one who didn't make it to higher ground, the one who stayed behind when others fled, the one who died with 3 juveniles pressed to her side. Was she a mother, a leader, a stranger? Does it even matter? Because someone stayed with her, and someone else died watching. And you wonder how much of this is in today's crocodiles, that loyalty, that proximity, that collective trust. You glance down at the ridge again. You see patterns now. Not spirals this time, but clusters. Small circles of body all turned inward, tails overlapping, heads pointed toward each other. It looks like a conversation that fossilized mid-sentence. And you're eavesdropping. You whisper, "I'm sorry." Not for stepping here, for not understanding sooner. You take one last look and climb the opposite ridge. At the top, you turn around. The fossil bed is golden now, lit by late sun shadows draped between ribs and snouts. You imagine them blinking at you, not with threat, but with recognition. You're not a scientist to them. You're not prey. You're a witness. They didn't die alone, and they want you to know that. They wait for storms like wolves in snow. You descend from the fossil-riddled ridge into a lowland basin where the air hangs like a wet curtain thick with pressure dense with warning. The light shifts. The sun has dulled, flattened behind a wall of creeping gray. The leaves don't rustle, they brace. The frogs don't sing, they vanish. Even the water stops pretending to flow. It holds its breath. You smell ozone. The storm is coming, and so are they. But not in panic, not in retreat. In position. The first you see is already still half buried in mud beneath a banyan-like tree whose roots curl like knuckles around its torso. The crocodile does not twitch, does not blink. It's placed there, like a gear, like a trap, waiting to be triggered by weather. Then you see the others, 5, no 8. All stationary, all spaced apart but aligned. Like someone dropped them from the sky using a grid. Each one anchored into the soil as if expecting something not to pass but to arrive. You find yourself crouching instinctively trying to avoid breaking the pattern. Because there is one here. A geometry to the waiting. An invisible map only they seem to see. You whisper, "Why are you bracing?" And the wind responds not with sound but with scent. The smell of wet bark, of churning clouds, of lightning already forgotten by the sky. Then a drop hits your cheek, and suddenly the world shifts. Not loudly, just deeply. The crocodiles lift their heads almost in unison like sleepers stirred by the same dream. Then another drop, then 20, then hundreds. Rain, not gentle, not violent, but heavy, rhythmic. And that's when the behavior changes. Because they don't scatter, don't dive for cover. They move into place. One by one, they slide from mud hollows into shallow water. Not swimming aligning. Some take flanking positions along narrow gullies. Others wedge themselves at the bases of half-flooded trails. A few nestle beside each other, jaw to tail like pieces in a chess opening. It's not defensive. It's anticipatory. You realize they've done this before, maybe 100 times, maybe for 100 generations. Here's your historical fact. Modern crocodiles are known to exploit seasonal flooding events. They understand how rising water displaces prey, forces antelope, pigs, fish, and birds into new vulnerable positions. Some even track the sound of distant thunder and relocate in advance, not by instinct, by experience. Historians still debate the depth of this foresight. Is it truly predictive or just learned from repetition? Either way, you're watching a group of ancient survivors not fleeing the storm but welcoming it. You step back into the trees, rain soaking your shoulders, and watch the patterns settle. And that's when the prey arrives. Not dramatically, not panicked, just misguided. A herd of small ornithopods, bird-hipped, fast-footed, built for dry ground. They sweep into the basin from a trail you hadn't noticed, probably pushed from higher elevation by the same barometric pressure that's curling your toes right now. They hesitate briefly at the basin's edge, then make the mistake of entering. And the crocodiles, they wait. They let them enter. 1, 2, a dozen, all of them stepping between the jaws of the earth without realizing it. Then one of the ornithopods slips on a root, chirps in alarm. That's the trigger. The nearest croc doesn't pounce, it redirects. A tail whip, precise controlled, knocks one juvenile sideways into another's path. Confusion spreads. The herd contracts. And the crocs close in. But not wildly, not all at once. It's a weave. A crisscross of strikes and feints. One rises snapping at empty space not to catch but to corral. Another blocks a side path, eyes calm, jaws sealed. A third slides forward and disappears beneath the water. Seconds later, it re-emerges ahead of the herd, cutting off their escape before they knew they were escaping. You're not watching a hunt. You're watching a weather ritual. Here's your off-topic fact. Some Arctic wolves arrange themselves downwind of caribou herds when storms approach, using noise and disorientation to funnel prey toward hidden packmates. They don't chase. They shape the situation. That's what this is. The storm is cover, confusion, wet ground and muffled footsteps and panicked prey with nowhere to go but deeper. And the crocodiles, they've waited for this. You watch one breach the surface, jaws snapping shut around the back leg of an adult. The impact is surgical. The kill comes later. Right now, the message is clear. Stay together, die slower. The herd splinters. Some escape, most don't. The basin becomes a thunderdrum tangle of teeth and limbs and motionless water turned alive. But still, there is order. No croc turns on another. No chaos spirals out of control. They know where they are, what they're doing, and how to finish it. You crouch lower, heart hammering, not from fear but reverence. You're watching strategy with scales. You're watching wolves in water. You're watching the rain-fed choreography of creatures who don't run from the storm. They become it. Historians argue crocodiles don't care. The rain's finally easing. Not gone, just quieter now, softer around the edges like the storm is humming itself to sleep. You stand beneath the bowed arms of a giant fern, your skin soaked, your thoughts overloaded. Everything you've witnessed over the past day, if it was a day, has rearranged what you thought you knew about crocodiles, about predators, about ancient strategy. And the truth, you're not alone in that confusion. Because back in the world of paleontology, herpetology, and academic elbow patching, there's an argument that never quite dies. Were ancient crocodiles social? And if they were, how much? You'd think it would be simple. Bones are bones, tracks are tracks, but behaviors, those are whispers. And whispers don't fossilize. One camp insists that crocs have always been opportunistic loners, that they congregate only by necessity, nesting, sunbathing, seasonal bottlenecks, and that anything that looks like cooperation is really just tolerance. The other camp, they see the same fossil clusters, the same trackway spirals, the same synchronized strikes in modern footage, and they argue for something richer. Not friendship, maybe, but structure. They point to the few observed behaviors in modern species that don't fit the lone predator narrative shared, basking without aggression. Coordinated feeding in shallow waters, nest guarding in pairs, even juvenile care by unrelated adults. Historians still debate whether such behavior is ancestral or newly emerged. Is it primitive cooperation or a rare context-driven fluke? And yet, while they argue, crocodiles continue. Because crocodiles don't need the debate. They need the results. You watch now as the basin resets. The mud ripples close like stitches in a wound. The prey are gone, dragged, or eaten, or scattered into the tree line. The crocodiles are returning to their stillness. But not all alone. Some rest near each other, snouts almost touching, eyes closed. And no one is fighting. You sit on a log at the edge of the clearing, half sunken, half stable, and you try to replay the last few hours in your head like a film reel. It doesn't make sense. Not in the way textbooks prefer. Because everything you've seen breaks the model. A kill shared, a signal growl obeyed, a nursery protected, a storm anticipated, and all of it done with a precision that suggests practice, not chance. Your off-topic fact. There's a species of African weaver bird that constructs communal nests. Massive, multi-roomed structures with individual chambers, shared roofs, and internal corridors. Each bird acts independently, but the result is a collective masterpiece. No single architect, just shared logic. That's what the crocodiles seem to be doing. Not thinking together, but reacting together. A behavior not handed down by reason, but by pattern. And that's where the historians hit a wall. Because humans love labels. Pack hunter, solitary ambush predator, dominant alpha. But crocodiles, they just do. You watch one smaller croc drag a carcass past another twice its size. No challenge, no theft. The larger one opens one eye, then closes it again. No interest. The younger croc stops, adjusts its grip, and continues on. No hierarchy, no fight, just a shared understanding. Plenty of swamp, no need for drama, you whisper. Are you all just better at this than we are? A splash somewhere distant replies. Not an answer, just a shrug. You think of the fossil bed again. Those clustered bodies, those curled postures. And you wonder, what if all this time we were looking at the wrong clues? What if the evidence wasn't in the violence but in the space between it? Historians still argue over whether complex behavior requires a complex brain. But the crocodile doesn't care. Its brain is small, sure, but ancient, efficient, streamlined over hundreds of millions of years to do one thing beautifully: survive. Not alone, not always together, but adaptively. You lean back on the log, letting the drizzle coat your face like permission. For a moment, it almost feels like peace. Like you're no longer trespassing, just observing. Like they've let you stay long enough to see. And maybe they have. Because when you finally rise and prepare to move again, none of them follow. No heads rise, no jaws open. They've returned to their stillness, not because you're forgotten, but because you're no longer relevant. You're not prey. You're not part of the system. You're a loose leaf fluttering across a machine that's older than argument, and far too efficient to waste time explaining itself. You try to leave, but they flank the exit. The swamp has started to thin. You can feel it. The ground is firmer, the trees shift from tangled elders into lankier, younger tom. The scent of brackish decay fades, replaced by that almost forgotten smell, dry bark and dusty air. You tell yourself the worst is behind you. The pattern is breaking, that the predators have gone back to whatever patient stillness they come from. You're wrong. You spot the path up ahead, an opening between two fern walls, shaded but walkable, the kind of trail that looks like it might lead to high ground. Safety, civilization even. And that's when you notice the eyes. One to the left, then one to the right. Neither blinks. They don't need to. They see you. And you finally get it, not in theory, but in gut-deep understanding. This whole day wasn't just observation. It was containment. You've been herded, guided, tested. Now you're reaching the edge, and they're here to make sure you leave properly. Not with violence, just with clarity. You stop just before the exit and listen. The water is quieter now, but not empty. You hear breaths, the kind that don't ask permission. Just slow, steady inhales, like someone patiently taking notes. You take a cautious step forward. The crocodile on the right slides into the water, disappears. The one on the left mirrors the movement a few seconds later. You don't see them anymore, but they haven't left. They've shifted position, flanked the exit, just in case. You whisper, seriously, but you already know the answer. Here's your final historical fact. Fossilized crocodilian trackways in multiple regions. especially those in South America, show directional convergence, meaning crocs moving towards the same area from different directions. Some paleontologists interpret this as environmental reaction. Others suggest something more organized territory monitoring. Area control. Historians still debate whether crocodilians once patrolled or simply wandered. But today, you're part of the equation. You're being escorted out. Your off-topic fact. The ancient Romans once employed war elephants not just for battle, but to create psychological barriers. They didn't need to fight. Just stand there, be seen, change decisions with presence alone. That's what's happening now. No hissing, no rushing, just shapes, floating just deep enough to make sure you feel seen. You've walked through coordinated hunts, spiral rituals, group nestings, storm strategies, and fossilized councils of the dead. And now at the very end, the crocodiles are showing you their final tactic. Boundaries, not fences, not warnings, just quiet limits. As you approach the trail, a final crocodile surfaces directly ahead. Just its eyes and snout. A reminder. You pause, and then shift left. It doesn't follow. It watches. You walk around it. Not fast, not slow, just enough to say I get it. And finally, you pass through. No celebration, no growls behind you, no thudding chase scenes, just the soft murmur of breath and water. They let you go. Because you learned. You didn't just survive the swamp, you were measured by it. And whatever score you earned, it was high enough to walk away. But you'll never walk the same. Because something ancient watched you, calculated you, and then in the end chose not to finish you. Not out of mercy, out of design. You step onto dry land. The trail winds upward. Birds return. The air smells newer, thinner. You take one last look behind you. The water is still. Too still. They're still there, watching. Not because they're angry, but because they remember. And now so will you. You've seen things now, things you didn't expect from ancient reptiles. This journey through the swamp wasn't just about crocodiles and their teeth. It was about time, memory, and survival that doesn't need to roar to leave a scar. From ambush choreography to fossilized group deaths from the ghost of Postosuchus, to hatchlings guarded like treasure, what began as a question, did ancient crocodiles hunt in packs, unfolded into something stranger and deeper? They didn't need orders or leaders, just silence, timing, and understanding written in mud instead of script. The spirals, the feeding rituals, the positioning during storms, the way a single growl could adjust 20 bodies. You've witnessed not just behavior, but legacy. The kind that doesn't require a brain like ours, only a memory older than language. And at the end you realize something: the scariest predators aren't the loudest, fastest, or most violent. They're the ones who wait, who observe, who learn, who remember your steps long after you've left their world. Now go ahead and breathe again. The water's behind you, but if you ever return, be polite, be quiet. And know that the eyes watching from below, they never really closed.